One moment, please.
Are y'all thumbs up? All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. We have a very active August ahead of us, a lot to get done here in the legislature. One of our most critical bills is AB 2564, and I'm grateful to talk a little bit, along with a lot of other community partners, about why we need to send this to the governor's desk, because it's essential because it affects every consumer here in the state of California. Right now, companies have been engaging in a lot of concerted effort to be able to use your personal information, like your age, your gender, your marital status, your location, to selectively decide what price you might be willing to pay for a certain good or service. And simply put, they're using what they know about you, who you are, where you frequent, how much you spend, where your location is, to be able to modularize the price so that every person in California might be paying a different price for the exact same thing. Now, at a time when prices for basic necessities are rising across the board, it is more critical than ever that the legislature step up and ensure that people are not being unfairly charged higher prices due to their actual or perceived characteristics. And let's be clear, this practice has a very concerted effort and it hits hardest on lower income individuals and those with limited shopping options. Now, let's dial it back a few years. In January of 2025, the Federal Trade Commission released a preliminary study indicating that a wide range of personal data was being used to set individualized consumer prices, with initial findings revealing details like a person's precise location or browsing history can frequently be used to target consumers with different prices for the same goods. Now, this also is not just a random and sporadic issue by a couple of small bad actors. It's becoming a key part of a retail strategy across industries. Going all the way back to 2017, you might know the large firm McKinsey Company. It's a consulting firm, a management consulting firm, and it offers professional services to a lot of the largest corporations in the world. They published a research article claiming that dynamic pricing is a critical tool for retail, especially when paired with emerging AI-driven technologies. They actually calculated the math and said that you, as a large corporation, could see a 2 to 5% revenue growth by optimizing prices in real time, with some users actually seeing an additional 25% increase on the very same good. And unfortunately, with the change of federal administration that year, it seems very unlikely the FTC and the federal government is going to continue with this issue. In fact, right now, everything is stalled in the FTC. So we're also very hopeful that Congress will take meaningful action. But that is why California needs to act now, to be able to prevent surveillance pricing before it becomes the pervasive industry standard. Right now, legislatures across the country are waking up to this issue. Over 20 states this year have seen state-level legislation introduced in both red and blue states. And of course, California has always been a leader in consumer protections. We have to ensure that we are not left behind at the expense of corporate profits, and at the expense, to corporate profits at the expense of our constituents. And without legal protections, companies are going to keep using these tactics to boost their profits at the expense of everyday people. This is about fair pricing, something that we've always known as shoppers in the marketplace. Fair pricing has always been the gold standard, and it should not be a privilege. It is our right. So AB 2564 will put a stop to this practice to ensure that consumers are protected from predatory and discriminatory practices designed to maximize consumer spending. Ensuring fairness in pricing is not just about economic justice, it is about preventing a new form of digital exploitation. And next, I'd like to introduce my colleague and co-author of this bill, Assemblymember Calif.
Thank you so much, Senator Ward, for your incredible leadership on this and many other issues. And I'm honored to join you all this morning as a proud co-author of AB 2564. Over the past decade, advances in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data collection technologies have given rise to a new and largely highly regulated pricing model known as surveillance pricing, a form of individualized price discrimination in which businesses use real-time consumer data to set different prices for the same good or service based upon the consumer's perceived willingness or ability to pay. While California provides some of the strongest privacy protections in the nation, existing law does not restrict businesses from using lawfully collected consumer data to change their internal pricing. AB 2564 closes this loophole and seeks to correct this unchecked feature of the digital economy. It cannot allow businesses to extract maximum profit from consumers based not on market conditions or product costs, but on consumers' individual characteristics. And let's keep in mind, these corporations have been doing just fine, making plenty of profit without surveillance pricing. But the reality is they want it all. They want to squeeze every single penny out of hardworking Californians. And they don't want anyone, including the California state legislature or governor, to get in their way. As the fourth largest economy in the world, California can and must step in as surveillance pricing leaves buyers with diminished bargaining power and no visibility into the pricing algorithm. This is the dystopian nightmare that we see in the movies, read in the books. It's arrived at our doorstep. The question is, are legislators going to have the courage to fight for California families as they walk up the steps of the Capitol? Are they going to do the right thing and have the courage? And is the governor going to do the right thing and have the courage to say, we are not going to allow this to happen, we're going to stop it, just as it's beginning, because that's the time you want to stop something like this. If they start actually implementing it broadly, imagine 4, 5, 6 years down the road trying to stop something like this. It'll be a matter of practice, a pattern that will be impossible to stop. So Assemblymember Ward is doing this at the right time, joining with our labor partners to say enough is enough. You know, we're the tech capital of the world. Are we going to say we're doing this for the benefit of Californians, or is it just for the benefit of a few billionaires? Because that's what this really comes down to, is the enormous amount of wealth that's being hoarded versus average California families just struggling to survive. I'm proud to co-author this piece of legislation to address an increasingly inequitable digital marketplace in which consumers may unknowingly pay more based on data profiles. And that's not just dystopian, that's really just handing over all of our resources to these companies to allow them to do with us what they see fit. And we must stop that now.
Thank you, Assemblymember Collins. And next, my honor to welcome back my former colleague to the Capitol, but importantly, the head, the president of the California Labor Federation, Lorena Gonzalez.
It was a little weird to come back and have to go through the middle of the chapter. But that's right. Thank you for coming. This is such an important issue, and people ask, why is this a priority for organized labor? How does this fit in? And I've seen a lot of news coverage and a lot of folks in this building, including the governor, talk about affordability. I mean, I don't really talk about that. It seems like a lofty word. But in reality, our members, our working people talk about it every day. Shit's too expensive, and we're not making enough money. And if you talk about how do you tackle this, this is the first bill we saw that absolutely goes to the heart of that question. How do we ensure working people can make ends meet and aren't being jacked by the system? This bill does that. And let me explain how. A lot of times, you know, these algorithms and how things work get confusing, right? It's like you can kind of imagine, but until you actually see it, until you actually imagine. So what can happen with surveillance pricing and digital pricing, because they go together, is basically a single mom who's worked 2 shifts has to go get something to eat to feed her children after work. Grocery store knows this. They know her activities. They know every Tuesday and Thursday she comes in and gets rotisserie chicken. They know she's a single mom. They know exactly how much is in her bank account, how much she owes on credit cards, how much she's willing to spend. They're not looking to give her a discount. They're looking to give her a price point that she can't say no to because she is desperate to get home. It's desperation pricing. That's what this is. It's not saying somebody's rich, they can spend more money. I mean, I might be for that. That's not what they're doing. They are literally preying on people who are vulnerable, who are already exhausted, who have to do something, have to get somewhere. And that's what we will all experience if we don't stop it now. So I'm very grateful to these 2 gentlemen who are always on the forefront of standing up for working families, and especially Assemblymember Ward on this bill. It's not easy. We've seen how many people want to come out against it. But at the end of the day, if people are serious about tackling what they call affordability, it starts here. It starts right here. We want to make sure working people don't have their paychecks decreased penny by penny by penny because mega corporations know how desperate they are. We've got to stop it now so it doesn't become that situation that I just explained to you, which we're not far off from, and I would argue probably could happen right now with some of the techniques that they're using. So we hope that the Senate will pass this bill, and of course the governor needs to sign it. So thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Next, I'd also like to invite up from the House of Labor, Jim Araby, the UFCW Local 5 president from the Bay Area.
Thank you, Assemblymember Ward. Thank you, Assemblymember Colorado. Always appreciate your leadership on these issues. My name is Jim Araby. I'm not the president of Local 5, but I do work with our members. And we're a union that represents over 150,000 grocery workers in the state of California and over 1 million workers nationwide. And just to build on top of what Lorena said, I think there's 3 things you need to understand about surveillance pricing. It's already happening right now. When you go on an app, you go to any sort of grocery app, ask 4 of your friends to go on the same grocery app, search the same items, and depending on how you shop, the prices are going to be different. It's already happening right now. But it's coming to a grocery store near you. Because what they're doing in the grocery stores is they're actually converting, those little, our members used to put the tags, do price changes, and they would put the tags. Those are no longer in grocery stores. Big retailers are now converting to digital price tags across the spectrum. And what those digital price tags are going to do, they're not telling you this, they're going to link to the app that you use to get the discounts, and they're going to use and collect all that information in the app. And as you walk by those digital price tags, those numbers can change depending on who you are and how you shop. So if we do not regulate this practice now, each one of you are going to be paying different prices for items based upon your income, all of those different demographics that you load into your app, to give the company information. And then when you go to the clerk, if there is a clerk, because there's sometimes, we hope you go to the clerk, you're going to get a different price than the person behind you. And what that's going to do is, number one, is we think that's, that is surveillance pricing, is unfair. But the second thing it does is it creates tension between the worker that's working in that store to help you out and the customer. And that's going to create even more conflict inside the grocery stores as people see that people are paying different prices, right? And so that's the other piece of this, the human side story of this practice is that you will all be paying different prices. You will then have very upset customers that'll be in conflict with workers and stores, and just creates a dynamic, Hunger Games dynamic where everyone's out for themselves, right? And so we really need to prevent that. And I just want to say thank you again to Assemblymember Ward and Assemblymember Colorado. We call on the Senate. We hope the governor, who's supposedly advocating for working families, advocates and signs this bill when it gets to his desk. And I just want to say thank you so much for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you, Jim. Well, it takes a coalition of a lot of community partners to raise this issue. So first, I'd like to welcome Shilman Dashan, who's the Deputy Director of the California Low Income Consumer Coalition.
Thank you, and I'll echo some of the comments that have been made already. So we all want technology to make life easier, cheaper, and more convenient. But instead what we are getting is a dystopia where cameras can scan the face of a young, sleep-deprived mom. She's pushing a grocery cart with her young toddler who's hungry in it. Before she even makes it to the aisles, the store has identified. She has an infant at home. Her gas tank is almost empty. She's on her last diaper. At checkout, the store charges her more on diapers, formula, and chicken nuggets. Who wants to live like this? Our legal aid clients live on razor-thin margins. They depend on predictable and fair pricing. For many, an unexpected $10 loss is a significant budget problem. Many have to make decisions daily between buying less food, risking utility shutoff or an eviction, delaying medication refills, to maybe get to their next direct deposit. Often they have relied on coupons and sales and senior discounts for decades. So I want to address specifically what the opposition is saying about this is going to affect coupons and your ability to get coupons. If this bill did away with real discounts and coupons that provide critical relief to our clients, Click would be number one and it's good. They know everybody hates it and it's indefensible. Instead, they're deploying scare tactics, claiming that the bill is going to stop them from offering coupons and discounts. But we know that that's not true, because every time they've had an opportunity to solve that problem, fix the bill, give us an amendment that would fix that, all they do is propose amendments that will bring back the surveillance pricing and are not any better at ensuring that the coupons that the consumer advocates have already made sure are staying in the bill, they don't improve on it. So there's no improvement to that, and there is the surveillance pricing that they put back in the bill. So I think we should believe what they do and not what they say. These practices will only get worse if we don't stop it now. I urge every legislator to vote to pass the bill. I urge the governor to sign it when it comes to his desk. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon. Next, I'd like to invite up Catherine Bracey, who is the CEO and founder of Tech Equity.
So I'm here to provide the history lesson. Up until the late 1800s, prices were negotiated one-on-one. You haggled. And that system let sellers charge different people different prices for the exact same item. And they did this based on your race, your gender, what the weather was, how much they thought they could get away with. It was actually the Quakers who said, this is wrong. This is a form of discrimination. So they invented, for the time, a revolutionary technology called the price tag. One price marked clearly for everyone, no matter who you were or what the seller could guess about you. That simple idea became a cornerstone of fair commerce, predictable family budgets, and I would argue a piece of building the middle class in this country. Today, that principle is under attack, not through haggling, but through something far more sophisticated, which is surveillance pricing. Companies now collect massive amounts of our personal data to use against us. They feed that into algorithms that calculate in real time the absolute most each of us individually will pay before we walk away. It's the same discrimination that the price tag was invented to stop. It is now supercharged and scaled and hidden behind a screen. AB 2564 brings us back to the founding principle. It requires that discounted prices be verifiably lower than a real publicly disclosed market price. It requires that any personalized pricing be transparent with clearly disclosed criteria any consumer could actually meet. And it gives consumers real power to enforce that right through civil penalties and the ability to take action themselves. And it's not just the right thing to do, it's also extremely popular. We just commissioned polling that will be released in a couple of weeks, and we found two things. One, that inflation and affordability are the #1 issue for Californians right now, overwhelmingly. And two, that 70% of Californians favor a prohibition on surveillance pricing, with only 12% opposed. Even when you use these arguments about coupons and put those in front of Californians, they still overwhelmingly favors banning surveillance pricing. Their support, that argument barely budges their support. So people know that these tactics are much more likely to be used to increase their prices than decrease them. This isn't just a new idea, it's one of the oldest ideas in American commerce, and we need to bring back the price tag. So I want to say thank you to Assemblymember Ward and Assemblymember Calif for their leadership on this really major issue, not just for Californians, but for the country, and urge all our other representatives to vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we have Becca Kramer, who's been by my side at a lot of these hearings, who's with Consumer Reports.
Consumer Reports is proud to co-sponsor AB 2564. We have millions of members across the country, and more than 170,000 live in California. And when we talk to them, much like what my colleagues have said, we hear that surveillance pricing feels deeply unfair in their view, and it makes them feel like they're being played. A Groundwork Collaborative poll from May of this year also echoed these findings. 8 in 10 voters believe that companies should not be allowed to use a customer's personal information to charge different prices for the same item. And an overwhelming majority of voters also felt that banning surveillance pricing would not affect discounts that all customers can sign up for. So the public agrees. Customers should be charged the same price for the same item, and only businesses are benefiting from surveillance pricing. That's why Consumer Reports has been advocating for new laws to ban the practice of surveillance pricing across the country. We've been pleased to see some real momentum. In 2025, New York passed a law requiring companies to disclose when they do personalized pricing. And this year, 3 states have, for the first time, enacted laws that specifically ban the practice. Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have sent letters to CEOs demanding answers. And just this week, 6 former federal officials came out in strong support of AB 2564, which furthers the work that they began as part of the Biden administration to address the affordability crisis through stopping surveillance pricing. Assemblymember Ward and Assemblymember Colred have been incredible leaders on this issue for California, and we look forward to California building on other states' efforts to ban this practice. And we join in calling on members of the legislature to pass this bill and for the governor to sign it. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. And our final speaker this morning will be Haley, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get the name, Sukiyama?
Perfect.
Great, Director of State Affairs of the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Good morning. Our organization is dedicated to making sure that technology works for people and not against them. And that's why we are proud to support this bill addressing the deeply anti-consumer practice of surveillance pricing. Privacy is a human right. It's not currency to give away to be considered in how it should impact the price of your groceries. The FTC has found that companies will set higher prices based on personal information. In fact, it found in its report that you referenced that companies have shown people looking for baby thermometers who've been identified through their data as new parents will see higher prices based on their zip code and time of day. Surveillance pricing is opaque. That parent trying frantically to determine whether their baby is running a fever may never know that they're paying a premium because of what a company thinks of their neighborhood. When people do learn about this practice, as discussed, they recognize that surveillance pricing is deeply unfair. You know that, we know that. But our legal rights to resist it are exceedingly limited. So that's why I want to thank you for your leadership, and that's why we need bills such as AB 2564 to stop this practice. It is bad for privacy, bad for equity, and bad for us all.
Well, again, I want to close, I think, where I opened and just thank you all for being here. This is a pivotal month for a signature issue that really addresses the heart of several tenets of the work that we are doing here and leading on in the legislature. One, affordability. Loud and clear, we are all paying way too much for just having a normal course of life and being able to see a future for ourselves here in California. Two, fairness. We need to make sure that we are not treating different people differently across the board, but particularly when it comes to this affordability question, that we're using their own personal information to decide what their willingness to pay is for something and really discriminate based on that, causing and compressing a lot of those affordability challenges. And three, we're just trying to do what is right here. I love the history note. That was me early when I considered to be able to run this bill because we're not going back to the bartering days. This is really taking us forward into a dystopian era of bartering that you don't even know is happening to you in the first place until you start to do your own research. Until you ask a friend with a different profile to look up the same price on something and see that they're getting a different price there. Until you watch the news clips and realize, and I want to again give a lot of credit to our media partners that one, pulled together and shone a light on this issue happening in the first place. That got the conversation going in a very big and quick way. But two, they furthered that conversation to be able to talk about what this is happening out there. And it really brings a smile to my face, but also I think a renewed interest to get up here every Monday and keep hammering this bill. When I see those news reports, when CBS is out there talking to somebody in front of Target and asking them if they know that this is going on and this is what it is and what do they think, and universally they are offended. And you heard about the public polling that's out there that shows that across the board, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everybody thinks we've jumped the shark on this. Nobody wants to be personally attacked. Nobody wants to be able to pay higher prices. Nobody wants to have their own information used against them and against their interests. And so we have to define this in this new area of digital technologies. So many other state legislatures are working on here too. We have to define what surveillance pricing and say this is absolutely an offense to us in that marketplace and consumer relationship. So where are we at here today? I'm grateful for some of my colleagues in the Assembly that got this through the Assembly. We have another one coming up in the Assembly if we get it back, and so we're going to have to do some more convincing that we've been right all along. And I am really imploring our Senate to be able to do the right thing and find the courage because there's been a lot of opposition voices. And I'm not going to gloss over that. Let's talk about a lot of those points here right now. Because the first thing you see on that glossy little one-pager on there is that we're going to be banning discounts. Well, friends, if you got a D or better in grade school reading, you can go to page 3 of the very short bill and see that membership programs, loyalty programs, discounts are exempted from the definition of surveillance pricing. That is not what we're talking about here. That's not going to be in effect under the bill. So then when they're caught on that, they say, oh, okay, actually, well, we're talking about the disclosure piece. That somehow it's going to be too onerous and we're going to have all these lawsuits and they're going to affect small businesses. And we have listened to that. We have met with good faith with so many opposition voices to be able to try to make this sensible, workable, something we can actually implement, that we can argue is fair, but not actually letting go of the tenets of the bill. And so on the disclosure piece, that is an important critical piece because you need to know whether or not you are being treated equally, whether or not every veteran has a right to a discount at this store. And honestly, this is something that large businesses are doing anyway and putting on their website. So it's a little bit of a red herring. And when you exhaust all of these arguments, which actually aren't much to be able to get through, you come right back to the root of what we are talking about. And that's that McKinsey report that tells large corporations that they can extract more out of people's pockets, 2 to 5%, sometimes as much as 25%, without them even knowing it, because they are willing to pay it, and California consumers, your average mom and pop, are going to lose. And so that's why we are fighting so hard here, is to get the word out. I think that this is going to hang on the balance of communication. And so I'm grateful that you all are here today to be able to further that story and get the word out here. Because the more that people contact their senators and hear from local constituents that they are now aware of this, they don't want this happening to them, and they want us to do something about it. I loved hearing that clip from CBS about a nice woman outside of Target that said, yeah, government should do something about this. And that's what we're hearing loud and clear. And so we are stepping up right now to further AB 2564, pass it in the Senate, bring it back for conference of the Assembly, and send it to the governor for his signature. And hopefully we'll be able to right the universe so that we can continue to tackle even more harder questions next session. With that, I'd like to open it up to any media partners for your questions today, for myself or any of our speakers.
Yeah, and thank you for calling this press conference, Assemblymember Ward. Say if the governor, it gets to the governor desk, he passes it, if I'm not missing anything, would there be any type of infraction and penalties for these companies that are practicing, surveillance pricing?
Yeah. So right now, the enforcement is essentially left to the Attorney General or large cities or counties with district attorneys, just like we do for the existing unfair competition law. We have reflected that in this bill. It is not a major cause of lots of lawsuits that are going to come up. It is a deterrence. Nobody wants to be guilty of unfair competition law, but it's one that we already use today when we're thinking about business practices that have gone too far and deserve the Attorney General to jump in on behalf of the people of California.
And for a follow-up question, because we had this discussion as far as litigation risk, your colleagues, they do understand, that this will not affect those small businesses. I know that was some of the things that you guys were trying to iron out on the floor.
That's correct. This is not a vehicle that is going to generate a number of lawsuits that are out there right now. This is something that, again, we are likely going to, I don't want to put words in the Attorney General's mouth, but we are going to be looking to see about those large offenders that en masse are violating this law, because guaranteed if it's happening to one Californian, it's happening to 1 million Californians. And so we can step in there on the people's behalf to try to be able to make sure that this law, should it be enacted, is not violated.
Assemblymember Ward, speaking of the Attorney General, is Attorney General Bonta on board with your bill at this point?
Yeah, they are reviewing it right now, and so we are in active engagement with their legislative unit.
And can you explain the enforcement mechanism? I mean, if you're a consumer, let's say this becomes law and you're a consumer, how do you actually go about suing, getting restitution if somebody who feels victimized by a surveillance pricing?
You can actually contact either the Attorney General or the district attorney if your county or city applies, and ask them to be able to look into it and take action on behalf of the unfair competition law.
Can you explain what the difference? Because I saw some of that language kind of stripped out of recent amendments in the bill. Can you kind of explain to me what changed in the enforcement mechanism? It seems like back in June, and then it was the Judiciary Committee. What happened there?
So we negotiated with the Senate to remove the private right of action. So an individual would not be able to sue, but instead you would have to ask your public attorney to be able to do it on the people's behalf.
And you have 40 senators. How many of them are you grateful for right now?
30.
Okay. You had explained that, as well as, you know, the labor leaders, that how this is affecting disadvantaged communities. Could you explain how it's doing that, you know, compared to somebody buying a jar of peanut butter to the prices go up and down? Yeah.
Absolutely. So if somebody lives in a zip code where we call them, you know, food deserts, shopping deserts, they may not have access to a lot of resources. They may not have a lot of, they are entrapped. They don't have a lot of choices. And these companies that are going so far as to acquire this technology know this about that individual. And so if you are basically having very few options and you are now geolocated here, or they may, or maybe you're theorizing from your profile that you're a member of a certain community, that you're a single mom, they are going to be able to actually use that information to jack up the prices on your phone or your computer without you even knowing it. And so that actually creates, we know how this disparity is going to affect the landscape of California, and that's why it's going to be, I think, discriminatory to our low-income communities.
My last question. You said 20 other states have already, you know, tackled this issue.
Tackling, yes.
Tackling.
So we
why
put it in the first in the country last year, but you know, we hit pause because we want to get this bill right, and we wanted to make sure that we're not sending something to the governor that's going to be ineffective. So right now, the state of Connecticut and the state of New Jersey have enacted law that we like. There's slight nuances, but you know, our state, the basis of our state codes are also slightly different. So we're trying to Californize, and we've learned something. I've talked to peers, legislators from other states about how they're tackling this. Colorado sent a bill to the governor. It did a lot more things, and so Governor Polis actually vetoed that bill. Hopefully somebody in the next session will bring it back, and you know, so we'll work on the core tenets just like we are trying to work on. State of Washington just introduced legislation within the past month. So there is progress being made at the state legislature level, which we can do, but honestly, I would love for the Trump administration to actually take seriously consumer interests and rebuild the FTC in a way that gets them back on track to tackle this federally. Credit and hats off, because I think you're starting to see maybe an opening for bipartisan support. Senator Josh Hawley, senator from the state of Missouri, actually paired with a Democrat to introduce legislation and hold hearings yesterday. So maybe like that crack is happening as well too, and we'll be able to get, I think, a lot more momentum to support stop surveillance pricing nationwide. Yes?
I'm sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
It was something that, I'm catching up on it, but something that affects almost everybody. Does this affect, like, when you're looking for airline tickets?
Yes, it's happening, but this bill cannot actually stop that action because airline pricing is actually federally preempted, right? Interstate commerce is getting involved. So that is something that, you know, we learned about, you know, kind of studied early, but realized that this would actually not affect that. But it is happening, and I think, you know, read a few months ago that Delta Airlines actually was openly touting and, you know, sort of, you know, almost proud of the fact that they are using surveillance pricing. And this is, by the way, different than dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is also something that's been around for a while. You realize that there's only 5 seats left on the plane. They're gonna up the prices a little bit. But that is the same price that's available to everybody else. It is different than realizing that somebody has a different profile because they live in San Francisco, likely higher median income than somebody buying the same ticket living in Kansas City. They are disproportionately targeting and raising prices just based on presumption of who they know. So, sorry, long-winded answers to your question. Unfortunately, airline issues are not going to be covered by AB 2564, but it is happening.
Ariel there with City of Sacramento. You spoke about pushback. Are you willing to further amend this measure to get over that hurdle and to move past?
Yes, we are actively meeting daily, both with opposition, but also with other interested partners to make sure that the technical detail of this is right. I can't send something to the governor that's not going to implement, but we're also not sending something to the governor that's so watered down that it's ineffective, right? So there probably, likely will be one more set of amendments that we're going to ask the Senate floor to take up as well, so that we can have an optimal bill get to the governor's desk.
Which parts of the bill are you willing to compromise on?
We're still, like, you know, hearing, I think, a couple of other, like, areas of the bill that we're working on right now.
Like?
We're there, just with that position.
Yeah, we'll have to follow you. I'll get back to you.
Is it just like, here's what I'll ask, is it just like a discounts piece, is it clarifying language there? that they're
It's
looking
definitely
for?
technical and clarifying, but also when I do agree with that, it's because they actually might be right on this, right? So even though we've got broad exemptions in there for membership programs and loyalty programs and discount programs, there are things that we need to do to make sure that we are not somehow creating an interpretation or workaround that is going to place an unfair, that interpretation would be unfair on the business practice as well, if that makes sense. So, you know, we're actively, in good faith, listening to all of these perspectives, making sure that we get that language right, looking towards other states that have enacted language to see if we're reflecting that. So it's still a work in progress.
And I guess,
Yes.
is there any concern that there's a possibility that Governor Newsom may veto this bill?
There's always a possibility that he'll veto, but we are working closely with his office to try to make sure that we are aware of what he would want to see in a bill, and that we're sending him something that hopefully has met the respect of that conversation.
Where to next?
Next, we are on the Senate floor. So we are waiting when everything is right and ready to go. We're looking forward to a Senate vote.
Since we brought up Governor Newsom, I actually have a question for President Isabel, if that's okay. You know, I think
Everything at the press conference.
you delivered a pretty strong message to Governor Newsom earlier this year on AI protections and tech protections for workers. Where do you feel like you're at with it? I mean, do you feel like you've had productive conversations with the governor's team? Are you confident that he's going to support something coming out of this legislature that will help protect workers against tech?
Well, I've never, you know, I was a legislator for 8.5 years. I've learned never to bet on the governor, one way or another, or any governor. So you never do know. But we have been in talks with his staff, deep talks about every single one of the bills that we're running, and most of them are still alive, trying to get to the point that he can actually sign it. We've seen movement in his public discussion on AI. That's a start, but we need policy actually that regulates AI, that protects workers, that protects working people, and that's where we're now to. It's not enough to say, oh wait, there is a problem, without trying to cure for that problem, and that's what we're looking for in this legislative session. Before he